What kind of psychological manipulation is powerful enough to make you abandon your family, your money, your very identity, and believe it's the right thing to do? Some did it for paradise, others for justice. A few even believed they were saving the world. The scary part is that they weren't crazy fanatics or maniac extremists to start with. They were ordinary people with jobs, families, and futures. What twisted their realities so completely? How were they brainwashed so badly that there was no turning back? And how close are you to the edge without even knowing it? Because thinking you're too smart to fall for brainwashing is what they all believed too. Heaven's Gate promised salvation in the stars.
The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
Qanon sold the fantasy of hidden heroes fighting evil. The Earth Liberation Front convinced its followers that burning buildings was the only way to save the planet. On the surface, these groups couldn't be more different. But dig deeper and you'll find the same psychological traps, each one carefully designed to hijack the human mind. It starts with a lure, something that speaks directly to your deepest fears or desires. Maybe it's the promise of purpose, the thrill of belonging, or the seductive idea that you're part of something bigger. Once you're hooked, the reshaping begins. Your old identity gets chipped away, replaced by a new version, one that belongs entirely to the group. By the time you reach the final stage, you won't even recognize yourself. And that's exactly how they want it. Because the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we question, they're the ones we choose to believe.
You have to trust me. You have to believe me.
They called it the final exit. On March 26, 1997, police entered a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and found 39 bodies lying neatly in bunk beds, each dressed in identical black shirts and Nike sneakers. They had willingly swallowed poison, believing their souls would board a spaceship trailing the Hale-Bopp comet.
It is suicide to not leave. It is to take life to leave this body behind.
To the outside world, it was a mass suicide. To them, it was graduation day. These individuals were part of the cult known as Heaven's Gate, which was notorious for targeting lost souls. Its founder, Marshall Applewhite, preyed on intelligent but vulnerable people, college graduates, artists, engineers. His pitch wasn't about doom or fear. It was about transcendence. He promised them a higher purpose, a chance to shed their human flaws and evolve into divine beings. And in the 1970s, with society in upheaval and traditional religion losing its grip, that message found fertile ground. The lure was always the same. You are special. You were chosen. It wasn't just flattery. It was psychological bait. By convincing recruits they were part of an elite few, Applewhite made them want to believe.
It's been such an accelerated growth experience that no matter what happens, I could never regret taking this move.
And once that door cracked open, Stage 2 began.
We'll see you in our next session.
New members were immediately cut off from the world they'd always known. Families were told their loved ones had joined a cult and couldn't be reached. Phone calls were monitored. Mail was censored. The outside world became corrupt while the group became the only truth. They were then put through intense rituals and practices, sleep deprivation, strict vegan diets, forced to give up sex under the illusion of purification. Even their names were erased, replaced with strange-sounding labels like Lodioti or Junodi. Every rule Applewhite employed at Heaven's Gate had a purpose: to break down individuality and rewire obedience. But the real genius was in the language. Applewhite didn't yell or threaten. He spoke softly, using hypnotic repetition. Phrases like the next level and human individual metamorphosis became mental cages.
And the soul that was given to you is filled with next level information, next level mind, and a new creature is born.
The more recruits repeated them, the more their old reality faded, and their reshaped identity emerged. By the 1990s, Heaven's Gate had become a closed loop. Members lived together, worked together, and crucially, only trusted each other. The enclosure was complete. And when the internet emerged, Applewhite spun it as a sign. The comet was coming and their departure was near.
It's a very short time before our departure.
Doubters were rare, but when they appeared, the group had an answer. Your doubts aren't yours, they'd say. They're implants from the evil aliens trying to stop us. Even skepticism became proof of the conspiracy. There was no way out because the cult had rewritten the rules of logic itself. When Hale-Bopp appeared in 1997, Applewhite declared it was time. For weeks, the group rehearsed their suicides like a sacred ritual. They filmed farewell videos, smiling as they thanked Applewhite for their release. On the final night, they took phenobarbital mixed with vodka, laid down in shifts and placed purple shrouds over their faces. The last thing many saw was their leader's smiling face. Heaven's Gate proved how easily reality can be warped behind closed doors. But what happens when the cult isn't in a compound, but in everyone's pocket? In 2017, a single post on an internet forum ignited what would become one of the most widespread conspiracy movements in history. QAnon spread like a virus through minds rather than recruiting members. No compound walls, no armed guards, just a screen, a promise, and an enemy. QAnon targeted the modern world's deepest wounds: distrust in institutions, the chaos of information overload, the hunger for simple answers in a complex time. Its hook focused on secret knowledge rather than salvation. The first posts were cryptic.
Where we go one, we go all. God bless, Patriots.
Followers weren't just reading theories. They were solving a puzzle only the awakened could understand. And with every decoded message came a dopamine hit and the thrill of being in on it. Recruits weren't fringe extremists. They were yoga moms, veterans, small business owners, and everyday people. What united them wasn't ideology, but the need for purpose, for control, and for a story where they were the heroes. QAnon lured people in by selling identity more than belief. The shift happened in steps. A shared meme here, a just asking questions video there. Algorithms did the heavy lifting, flooding feeds with escalating content. Doubt was framed as critical thinking while actual facts became fake news. Language was weaponized. Do your own research really meant trust only us. Red pilling implied brave truth-seeking, not radicalization. Even the term QAnon was avoided. Followers called themselves patriots or truth seekers. The rebrand was deliberate. You weren't joining a cult. You were waking up. Isolation came digitally. Facebook groups became echo chambers where dissent got you banned. Twitter threads turned into rabbit holes where each click took you deeper. Offline relationships decreased as normies were deemed to be blind sheep following the herd. During the reshaping stage, the real world shrank, and the digital one became all-consuming. By 2020, QAnon had built something unprecedented, a decentralized cult. No central leader, just a self-sustaining ecosystem of influencers, hashtags, and viral prophecies. And when predictions failed, followers didn't leave. They doubled down. Cognitive dissonance was reframed as a test of faith. The lack of evidence was the evidence. Of course they'd cover it up. The more absurd the claim, the more it proved the conspiracy's power. And the final psychological hook? Make-believe enemies everyone could rally against. Liberals were dehumanized and known as baby-eating Satanists. Vaccines were now called tracking devices. Every school shooting, every celebrity death, every news cycle fed the narrative. There was no neutral ground. You were either with the storm or part of the darkness. On January 6, 2021, thousands stormed the U.S. Capitol, some in QAnon shirts, others screaming out, "Trust the plan." While some insurgents were there to prevent the certification of Joe Biden as the new U.S. president, others were looking for secret tunnels beneath the Capitol where they believed children were being held captive. Live streamers narrated the riot like a holy war, while followers at home cheered them on. As we're all well aware, the insurrection failed, and QAnon's predictions never materialized. But for many, the brainwashing held. Some still wait for the storm. Others migrated to new conspiracies, their need for the narrative outlasting the facts. Because in the end, it's all about filling a void for these individuals. A void that remains empty long after the screen goes dark. QAnon used keyboards to brainwash its followers, warping their reality in the process. But when that same us against the world mentality is handed gasoline and matches, that's when things get even more dangerous. They called it economic sabotage. To them, every flaming SUV dealership was a strike against ecological destruction. Between 1996 and 2001, the ELF launched over 20 major arson attacks across America, causing $100 million in damage. Their targets ranged from university research labs to luxury ski resorts. They always hit at night and always used homemade firebombs designed to burn buildings completely to the ground. But the ELF didn't recruit pyromaniacs or anarchists. They recruited true believers, the kind of people who cried watching nature documentaries, who volunteered at animal shelters, who genuinely believed civilization was killing the planet. The recruitment pitch centered on moral duty. New members were lured in with graphic footage of clear-cut forests and animal testing labs until their hands shook with rage. Then came the pivotal question. Now that you know, how can you just stand there? The genius was in the framing. Arson became direct action. Vandalism turned into property liberation. Even the name, Earth Liberation Front, made destruction sound noble. Most recruits came in thinking they'd hand out flyers. But within months, they were mixing gasoline with styrofoam to make homemade napalm. The reshaping happened through gradual exposure. First, members cut ties with anyone who didn't share their passion. Jobs were quit. Families were lied to. Many moved into activist collectives where the only voices they heard echoed that of their own. Language became a weapon. Corporations weren't complex entities with competing priorities. They were single-minded destroyers of nature. They were rebranded as ecocidal machines, dehumanizing them so that members could morally disengage and feel like they were dismantling appliances, not attacking livelihoods. Police were similarly viewed as thugs who only got in the way of real change. Even moderate environmentalists were dismissed as sellouts. The dehumanization spiral accelerated quickly. When you're saving the planet, what's one more burned building? What's one more death threat to a researcher? The rituals were also carefully escalated. New recruits started as lookouts during minor vandalism. Those who showed promise graduated to fire starters. Successful arsons were celebrated with secret ceremonies where members would pass around news clippings of their work. Each attack was documented and used as propaganda. Grainy footage of burning SUVs set to haunting music circulated underground. Every video ended the same ominous way. This is only the beginning. By 1999, the ELF operated through isolated cells, each pushing the others toward greater extremes. Members underwent what they called breakthroughs, intense sessions where they'd psych each other up before missions. Doubt was weakness, fear was betrayal. Jail time became a badge of honor. The psychological enclosure was absolute. Former members later described the mindset. I believed civilization was a terminal illness on the earth. That certainty made normal moral rules irrelevant. This moral absolutism made compromise impossible. When a University of Washington researcher received death threats after his lab was torched, one member told reporters, "Their cruelty deserves retaliation in kind. A burned lab is mercy compared to their crimes." New Year's Eve, 1999. As the world celebrated the millennium, ELF operatives slipped into Vail, Colorado. Their target was a $12 million ski resort expansion they claimed destroyed lynx habitat. Using devices made from plastic jugs and timers, they set simultaneous fires across the complex. Flames climbed 300 feet into the night sky, visible for miles. It was their most devastating attack. It was also their undoing. The FBI response was immediate and brutal. Operation Backfire turned lower-level members into informants. By 2006, most leaders were imprisoned. Yet at sentencing hearings, something chilling emerged. Even facing 20-year terms, many showed no remorse. One defendant smiled as victims described losing their livelihoods. Another told the judge, "I'll do it all again tomorrow." Because in their minds, they'd never been criminals. They were revolutionaries. When you're saving the world, morality looks different. Laws become obstacles. People become collateral. And fire? Fire becomes holy. Heaven's Gate, Qanon, the Earth Liberation Front, three faces of the same psychological trap. Brainwashing in these groups rarely involved torture or brute force. It came through a sense of community that slowly became a cage, through repetition that rewired truth, through isolation that made the outside world fade, and most of all, it came through belief, the kind that turns ordinary people into weapons. These weren't stupid or weak individuals. They were humans searching for meaning in a chaotic world, the college graduate who wanted purpose, the concerned parent who wanted truth, the idealist who wanted to save something bigger than themselves. Their needs were universal. Their vulnerability was human. What made these groups dangerous wasn't their ability to remove free will, but to redefine reality itself. They built worlds where suicide became ascension, where conspiracy theories became secret knowledge, where arson became salvation. Step by step, they made the unthinkable feel inevitable, the immoral feel righteous. And that's the true horror of brainwashing. It doesn't look like coercion when you're inside it. It feels like waking up. So the question isn't who falls for this. The question is, what are you searching for that might make you vulnerable? And how close is the next group waiting to offer it to you? Wrapped in a promise, sealed with a lie. Want to understand how else your mind can be hijacked? Click here to explore how sound manipulates emotions, because sometimes the most dangerous influences are the ones you never see coming. Thanks for watching.